Welcome and thank you for joining us for ECA's monthly national call. I'm Mark Cook, a member of ECA's Education Committee and the host of tonight's call. For those of you who are new to Elders Climate Action, we are grandparents, great aunts and uncles, and everyday folks determined to do all we can to leave a livable planet for future generations and all life. Our programs, communications, and chapters are focused on engaging elders in building the political will needed to solve the climate crisis. At ECA, we are elder-centered and volunteer-driven, seeking to inform, inspire, and engage older generations to take action on the climate crisis at the local, state, and federal levels. We are always looking for more volunteers to join our National Leadership Committees, including the education team, who brought tonight's programming. Reach out if you'd like to learn more. We'll drop links in the chat. Tonight, we're excited to hear some updates from Joanna Zeigler from Our Children's Trust about the legal cases filed by American youth. But first, about the call. This is a 1 hour and 15-minute session. Joanna will present, followed by Q&A, so please feel free to add questions for Joanna in the Q&A box. We will follow this national call with a quick 15-minute action party beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with our partners at Climate Action Now app. We hope you will stay on for the action party and help us to reach a goal of 2,500 actions in 2024. With that behind us, we welcome Joanna Zeigler. Joanna earned her BS in Environmental Science from Humboldt State University and her JD from the University of Hawaii's William S. Richardson's School of Law with a certificate in environmental law. Prior to law school, Joanna worked in several outdoor-related fields, including working as a field technician for the Forest Service in Oregon, measuring the effects of cattle on streams, teaching outdoor education throughout California and in the Seattle area, raft guiding on several rivers in California, and working as a field technician for AmeriCorps in Hilo, Hawaii, where she assisted in the native habitat restoration of the palila, an endangered bird native to Hawaii. After law school, Joanna clerked for the Honorable Lisa M. Ganova of the Hawaii State Intermediate Court of Appeals and worked at a Honolulu law firm in its litigation section. As a staff attorney at Our Children's Trust, Joanna is working on OCT's litigation for several of the state cases. In her free time, Joanna enjoys surfing, hiking, walking her dogs, lifting weights, and anything else involving outdoor adventures. In fact, last spring, Joanna was able to raft part of the Grand Canyon, which she described as an amazing experience. We believe this is the third or at least second time Joanna has joined ECA for a national call. Joanna, we're very happy to welcome you back again to tell us more about what is happening in Alaska and with other OCT lawsuits across the United States. Again, welcome and please proceed.
Gosh, thanks so much, Mark, and thank you to everyone for having me today and allowing me the opportunity to present to all of you. I'd just like to thank Elders Climate Action for the support that it has given Our Children's Trust over the years. And as you stated, last year I was able to present regarding our Hawaii case. So I'm excited to be back this year to share some exciting information about our newly filed Alaska case. So thank you all so much. I will attempt to share my screen now with sound. And hopefully it all goes well. Let's see. Okay. Sorry about that. So I'll just start by giving a little bit of background about our Children's Trust for those of you who are not familiar with our mission. Our Children's Trust is a nonprofit law firm that brings actions on behalf of our youth to support their fundamental right to a healthy climate system. And our cases that we bring are supported by three main goals. Our lawsuits are based on the best available science, which means that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere must be reduced to 350 parts per million for a safe climate. And we have experts join our cases on a pro bono basis to support the youth, and they write expert reports and testify at trial because they know that this is a really important issue. Our litigation is youth powered, so we represent youth, and a huge part of bringing these cases is an opportunity to provide a platform for the youth to tell their stories and for them to share how they are being harmed by climate change. And then our lawsuits are powered by democracy, and we believe that the courts are a very important part of defining the youth's rights to a safe climate. And in fact, it's explicitly within the court's jurisdiction to interpret the Constitution and the fundamental rights protected by the Constitution. So given those goals, we believe that young people deserve to be happy and safe now and into the future. And we use our legal expertise and the scientific expertise of our experts so that youth can tell their stories and protect their rights. So ultimately, what we seek is to hold governments accountable for the climate crisis. So the courts are part of the three branches of government and are crucial in protecting our youth and the planet from the worsening effects of climate change. And this is an opportunity for the youth to join these cases and share their harms in this platform and to have their voices heard by the judges that are presiding over their cases. So much of the factual evidence that we present in our complaints and at trial show that youth are disproportionately affected, both physically and mentally, by the harms caused by climate change. And that is a big part of the story that we present in our cases. So this is sort of a depiction of how youth are affected by the harms of climate change. Because youth are still developing, in particular, their organs are still developing, such as the lungs and brain. Their behavioral patterns are affected by increasing temperatures and wildfire smoke. And then there's psychological effects of the climate crisis. They are experiencing and expecting dangerous climate harms that can be traumatic and will have lasting consequences for their mental health. This can result in elevated levels of anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and those sort of experiences. So disproportionately, youth are affected compared to adults. And one thing that we really emphasize in our Alaska case, which I'll talk about more, is that these youth are going to experience population declines in the natural world. They'll experience extinctions of species, and they're going to experience shifts in the species that they rely on to sustain their lives and cultures, and that can have lasting impacts. So as part of our work, we do partner with the medical community, and it's important to have experts that can explain and detail how the exposure pathways, such as extreme weather events and heat stress and air quality and water quality, are all affecting and having adverse effects on infants and children. And then we also have mental health experts. And over here in the left bottom corner of the slide is Dr. Lisa Van Sesteren, who has been working with us for years and has worked closely and studied the mental health effects that are caused by climate change. And she has also coined a phrase called institutional betrayal. And that is what she uses to describe the emotional response when a trusted organization like our government, which is designed to protect us, knowingly takes harmful action. And so she uses that to explain why these youth are being affected mentally by the effects of climate change and the impacts of climate change. So I have a video, and this is a video of a plaintiff from our first lawsuit, which was filed in 2011. His name is Nelson Canuck, and he is from Kipnuk, Alaska. He was 16 at the time of the filing of that case. And this video is just him describing what he is witnessing in his community and the drastic changes that were happening in his village, like melting permafrost and floods and melting ice. And it's interesting to play this video now because it's from 2011, and we actually have a plaintiff in our Alaska case from Kipnuk as well. And so now in 2024, you can imagine she's experiencing these same drastic impacts, but over a decade later, and it's certainly not getting any better. So let me press play, and then if you want to chime in if you can't hear, but hopefully you can hear this audio.
The warmer temperatures are causing the permafrost to melt, and the permafrost to melt affects the land through erosion. So the erosion cuts off some land that falls into the river, and we lose quite a bit each year. Yeah, we have another 40 or so feet left until the bank of the river reaches our house. If it keeps moving at the same rate, then in the next few years, then we might have to move our house to another location. It does scare me because we don't know if there'll be an ice pack or not in the future. But if there's not, then it would be much harder to harvest seal for our subsistence way of lifestyle, especially for the seal oil that we heavily depend on and as part of our everyday lives. The warmer temperatures could affect our way of life out here. And if we didn't get to come out here and do any of this with picking berries or any of that, it would be hard on our family, and not only my family, but all the families in the community as well, because about 90% or so of our diet year-round is from the tundra or the ocean, and it would be hard economically. Yeah, we're really dependent on all this food that we get, and we're very thankful for it. We're a small town that probably no one knows about, but I'd like to have our voices heard and letting other people know how much we are affected by climate change. I'm asking for help with how we're going to deal with this. My name is Nelson Canuck, and I'm 16 years old. My name in the Yupik language is Angutlak, and it means strong and wise man.
Yeah, so I've watched this video many times, and every time I watch it, it's still just sort of, I don't know, brings up the emotions. And you can see when we give the youth the opportunity to share their stories, how impactful it truly is, because they put it in their own words and they state it so well, how they really are being impacted. Whoops. So that brings me to our current case. The case is called Sagoonick v. State of Alaska. And you may see in reference to it, sometimes we'll put a number 2 next to the Alaska, because this is actually the second case where Summer Sagoonick has been the lead plaintiff in a youth-led lawsuit against her government. The first case was in 2017. So Summer has been diligently fighting for her climate rights for quite some time. So this case, Sagoonick v. State of Alaska, is brought by 8 Alaska youth between the ages of 11 and 22. This is 5 of the plaintiffs, and so here in this picture we have Chalil from Fairbanks, Linnea from Gustavus, Bay from Juneau and Gustavus. Summer is from Unalakleet, Jamie is from Sagoonick, and then not pictured here, there's Cecily and Lila, who are sisters from Homer, and then Chowya, who is from Kipnook, like Nelson, who you just heard from. So the impacts that we have shared so far with the court that the youth are experiencing are in our complaint. The complaint is the document that you file with the court that starts a lawsuit off, and then you give it to the defendants and say, you're now being sued. These impacts that the plaintiffs are experiencing are about 30 pages of our nearly 80-page complaint. So it's lengthy, and I'll try and summarize some of the impacts that they're experiencing, but as you can imagine, it's overwhelming. So there's increasing temperatures and heat waves in Alaska. The state is warming at least twice as fast as the global average. The Arctic has been warming nearly 4 times faster than the global average since 1979. Increasing temperatures have caused salmon populations to decline, for example, and all of the youth in this case depend on salmon for their subsistence, at least to some degree. And one drastic example is in the Yukon River. Salmon populations have crashed, leading to restrictions on subsistence fishing. Chalil and her family have not met their subsistence needs from the Yukon River Chinook since 2008. And for the past 3 years, the river has actually been closed to Chinook subsistence fishing entirely. So Chalil, who and her family, who for generations have gone to the Yukon River to get their salmon for subsistence, no longer can go there right now. And so they've had to seek out other sources for salmon. There's also the thawing of permafrost. Permafrost underlies more than 80% of the state, and it's considered a carbon sink, meaning massive amounts of carbon is stored in the permafrost. So as the permafrost is melting, carbon is released, and more carbon is in the atmosphere, creating more impacts from climate change, and it's this really dangerous feedback loop. So the thawing of permafrost is causing accelerating shorelines, which you heard from Nelson saying that was happening in Kipnook, riverbank erosion. And this is really affecting Summer and Chowya and Jamie's homes and communities where they live. Chowya, for example, her home has shifted. And part of her house is actually coming off of its foundation. As you saw in the video with Nelson, many communities in Alaska are built on this system of boardwalks because it's on the permafrost. And as it's been melting, Chowya's house that is built on these stilts is suddenly now sinking. And that's also happening with Jamie and Sagoonick. So the thawing permafrost also prevents traditional food storage. It at one point acted as a traditional freezer because it was frozen. And now Summer and Chowya can no longer use the underground storage system for food. There's also changing weather patterns in Alaska and increase in extreme weather. Snowfall is arriving later in the season. Snowpack is decreasing and melting earlier, and precipitation is increasingly falling instead of snow. Variable winter temperatures and increase in precipitation causes more avalanches, and that is putting Bay's home in Juneau at risk from avalanche damage. And then the increase in precipitation changes the ecosystems, including the availability of berries, harming fish habitat and altering migration patterns. And this in turn affects the subsistence of the plaintiffs as well. So as animals are having to shift where they migrate because of warming temperatures, as fish habitats are changing, and as berries are becoming less frequent or available at different times of year, this all affects how these young people traditionally get their food. And as examples, Summer relies on subsistence foods. She approximates for about 85% of her diet. Chaya for about 95% of her diet, and then Jamie for at least 75% of her diet. So these young people really depend on this subsistence for their food sources. And as these changes are occurring, it's changing their ability to access food and their cultural practices around food. And then one other example is melting glaciers. Climate pollution is causing glacier melt and retreat. It's causing floods and landslides. And one drastic example, in August 2023, there was what's called a climate-induced outburst from a glacier lake that sent record volumes of water down the Mendenhall River. And if you watch footage of this, it caused significant erosion along the riverbanks, and entire trees were swept into the river, entire homes just fell in and floated by. And that was considered a rare event in 2023. But in August of this year, 2024, it happened again, and actually more water went down the river this year than it did last year. So these sort of unusual bursts that were happening, basically the glacier was holding back this water, and then a burst of water comes down. What would have been considered a very rare event has happened 2 years in a row now. So as I mentioned, our cases are based in the Constitution and in constitutional violations. So in Alaska, there's two articles that we brought our case under, Article 8 and Article 1 of the Alaska Constitution. Article 8 constitutionalizes Alaska's public trust doctrine. So 3 sections, 3, 15, and 17 are what's referred to as the equal access provisions. And so this means that government policies cannot discriminate against youth and future generations by limiting their access to Alaska's resources relative to past and present generations. And then also under Article 8, Section 4, that's referred to as the sustainable yield provision. And that essentially protects all replenishable resources to be administered on a sustainable yield principle. Meaning the state must protect the resources in perpetuity for the benefit of present and future generations. And then Article 1, Section 7 is Alaska's due process clause. And we've asserted a right for the youth to have a right to a climate system that sustains human life, liberty, and dignity. So that's the constitutional framework that we've brought our case under. And then the violation of these constitutional provisions is happening in a state statute. And this state statute that's on the screen now unconstitutionally mandates the development and advancement of the Alaska LNG project. So why is the Alaska LNG project bad? Well, it's one of the largest infrastructure projects ever proposed in the US. It's intended to transport, treat, and deliver to market substantial quantities of fossil gas. And what it is the fossil gas is extracted on the North Slope and then is intended to be transported 800 miles with some offshoots to supply fossil gas to the state of Alaska, 800 miles down to South Central Alaska, where it would then be exported to other countries. And as a result of this massive LNG project, this would, if built the way it's proposed in the statute, triple Alaska's annual greenhouse gas emissions. And the climate pollution that would result from the LNG project would worsen the climate changes in Alaska and then add additional harms for the plaintiffs. And what's important about this project is it's not, you build it and there's emissions and then it's done. This is a 30-year, lifespan to this project. So if we can stop it now, that's 30 years of emissions that are kept in the ground and not emitted into the atmosphere. So as I mentioned, preventing this project would avoid climate pollution if that otherwise would occur if the project went forward. What's important here is that there are non-fossil fuel energy systems across the sectors, including for electricity generation, that are feasible and technologically available to employ. So it's not as if we shut down this project and there's no other opportunities for the state of Alaska to produce energy. And in fact, that's what we try to emphasize with the court when we come to opposition from the defendants, is that let us put the evidence forward, and we will present experts that will show that this project is not needed to satisfy the energy needs of the state. Because that's what the defendants will say, right? Is that we need this project, otherwise, people are going to freeze and there will be no energy supplied. But in fact, we have experts that will be able to testify and show studies that there are other alternative means to providing electricity to the state. So again, this is Summer, our lead plaintiff. And as I said, this is her second youth-led lawsuit, first filed in 2017 with our first case. So Summer has been fighting for her rights for safe climate for 7 years now. And she's really dedicated and does it to protect her culture and to share the impacts that she's experiencing. So I have another video that has Summer in it. This is a video of a webinar that she did that talks about why this lawsuit is important, the importance of her culture, and why she's a part of these lawsuits. So I'll play that for you all.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm a Newback, so my name is Summer Sagoonick and I'm 21 years old. I was born and raised in Alaska, and I was given the Newback names of Abazunak, Masu, and Ikugak. I reside in the native village of Unakli, and I have 7 immediate family members living here, 5 being female. Through my family, I started practicing our traditional ways when I was only 1 year old. I learned everything that I know from my mother, my 2 aunties, and my grandmother. Never indoors, I would follow my aunties to their traps, first learning how to differentiate between different animal tracks and prints. Excuse me. My family has taught me the importance of our values, customs, and lifestyle. We are taught not only in school about our history, but we are shown what it means to be a Newback by our family, friends, and members of the community. Being a Newback means that we cherish these memories that we create together as a community and family, practicing traditions such as skin sewing, hunting, fishing, and harvesting our plants, roots, and berries. My ancestors have inhabited the area for the past 2,200 years, passing down the valuable knowledge that we use today. In my community, we have the highest respect for our elders because without them, we would have no culture. It takes a community to raise a child, teaching each other what it means to be Indigenous, Alaska Native, or Newback. The climate crisis is impacting my traditions right now. Today, we are losing this knowledge that is passed down generation by generation.
Thank you. And can you tell me some of the harms that you and your community are seeing?
Climate change has greatly affected our lifestyle, harming our community, our cultural traditions, our subsistence, and our heritage. A large part of our diet is provided by the land and ocean that surrounds and protects us. But over my 21 years of life, I have noticed that our lifestyle is being threatened by the warming of our climate. I strongly believe that climate change will make it nearly impossible to practice our hunting and gathering. Due to the loss of sea ice, the melting of permafrost, and the erosion of our land, it has become extremely dangerous for our community to travel to harvest our food. When I was born, caribou would roam on the tundra really close to our community, but now we have to travel about 200 to 300 miles just to catch them. This difficulty threatens our food security, our transportation, and our hope for a safe and promising future. Good morning.
So this is Linnea, and a quote from Linnea, and you can see that the reason why, she's involved in these lawsuits and her climate activism is for salmon, her land, and her health. And that is, you heard from Summer and Nelson, a common theme with our plaintiffs is they're just really trying to protect their way of life and their health and their future. So where are we now in the lawsuit? So our complaint, which I said is what starts the lawsuit, was filed on May 22nd, 2024. And on July 8th of this year, defendants filed a motion to dismiss, essentially asking the court to dismiss the case and make it go away. And they really relied on the previous two lawsuits as their reasoning that the court should dismiss this lawsuit. So as I mentioned, we had one in 2011 and then again in 2017, and they really relied on the Supreme Court's reasoning for the dismissal of those cases here. However, we were able to oppose the motion and in our opposition really outlined why this case is distinguishable. We had the benefit of two previous Supreme Court decisions to sort of guide our reasoning, and the lawsuit in this case, which is much more specific than the previous cases, challenging a specific statute. And we think that this is a case that should definitely go forward, even in light of the previous Supreme Court decisions. So we have a hearing on the motion to dismiss on October 15th, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. Alaska time. So if anybody knows anybody in Anchorage, feel free to spread the word about that date. We love to pack the courtroom and have, the attendance for the youth plaintiffs known. We'll bring the youth plaintiffs that are available that day to court to watch the hearing. And it's really just a really great experience when the community comes out and shows support for these youth at these hearings. It makes this sort of scary experience challenging your government and going to court a little bit easier for them, because they see that the community is there supporting them and, backing them in their cause. So with that, I would just also really like to thank all of you and your support. The things that we do and the actions that we bring at Our Children's Trust just wouldn't be possible without the support of community members and organizations like Elders Climate Action. And ECA has provided much support in the past, especially with our Juliana case, and we're just so grateful for that, and to know that you are out there supporting us through these cases. One other upcoming event that we have shortly here on September 4th of this year, we will have an oral argument in Utah. And my co-counsel, Andrew Welle, on the Alaska case will be arguing in Utah before the Utah Supreme Court. And he will be telling the Supreme Court why that case should not be dismissed. So if any of you all are in Utah, in particular Salt Lake City, there's a website here on this page to RSVP. And we will again be asking community members to come out and support the youth for that. All of the youth plaintiffs in that case will be attending the oral argument. And it's really fun actually to experience these hearings, to see the youth get to see their government in action. A lot of times kids don't get to go to court, or they don't see how the court system plays out. And so they get to participate, and the community comes out and supports them. So it's really neat to participate in it. So I'll just close with a little anecdote of why I do this work as an attorney. There's a lot of different things that I could be doing with my law degree, but I find myself at Our Children's Trust because these youth deserve a safe future. My niece just started her first week of college, and when I think back to my college days, I think of how carefree I was, and it makes me sad to think that as she goes through college and beyond, her life will be much different, as she will be carrying this heavy weight of the climate crisis, much more than I did and the generations before me did. So I do this work for her, but I do find hope in seeing incremental changes that are occurring. For example, we did win our trial in Montana against all odds. We got an incredible opinion from the court in our Montana case. And the youth in that case were just overjoyed with the support that they received and the court decision there. And then we came to an incredible settlement in Hawaii with the Department of Transportation and the state of Hawaii that will eventually, over time, create a pathway to decarbonizing the transportation sector in Hawaii. So it's wins like that give me hope, and I hope give all of you hope, and will motivate us to move forward and hopefully get a victory in Alaska and beyond. So if you are interested and would like to receive updates on our Sagoonick case or any of the other youth-led cases, feel free to go to the website at the bottom of the screen, youthvgov.org/join, and you can sign up for updates there. You can also follow us on social media if that is something you do. I guess you can tag at youthvgov or use the hashtags youthvgov or youthvgovak, and then we can share your messages on our social media as well. So with that, I think we can turn to questions or comments, or if anybody else has anything to share. And this is my contact information. Feel free to reach out, and I would love to hear from you all. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Jen, would you like me to ask the questions that are out there right now? Yeah. Okay, Joanna. So the first one is, what legal remedy are you asking from the state of Alaska for the damages you are explaining so strikingly?
Yeah, good question. So the relief that we request is what's called a declaratory judgment. So we're asking the court to declare that the statute that I mentioned that requires or mandates the Alaska LNG project, to declare it unconstitutional. And with that declaration, the court could also enter an injunction stopping the Alaska LNG project, but it also would hopefully declare the rights of the youth and their constitutional rights in a broader sense.
Okay, and then another question. Are there only certain states where this kind of suit could be brought? Could there be an elders case for stopping fossil fuel extraction?
I mean, there certainly could. I know there is a case where there was a group of women, I don't know if they categorize themselves as grandmas, but in a European lawsuit. And so our cases at Our Children's Trust are all youth-led, but certainly, you could see the viability of elders getting together and also wanting to fight for future generations as well.
Okay, and then I think you strictly sue states or state subdivisions, but it says, does your organization file suits against any of the oil companies?
Yeah, so we do not. We are about holding the government accountable for the climate crisis, and that's because we do file constitutional action. So the Constitution applies to government action, and we want the government to recognize a fundamental right to a safe climate, and that happens through the Constitution. So that's why we've specifically use the Constitution in whatever state, or in our federal cases, the United States Constitution, in order to get those rights declared.
Okay, boy, we have a lot of questions. Okay, what happened to the earlier Alaska case, and how is this different?
Yeah, so the first two Alaska cases were slightly broader in scope. The first one was asking for a broad right to declare that the public trust protected the climate. And then the second lawsuit targeted broad governmental action. And as a result, both were eventually dismissed, and there's two Supreme Court cases, or two Supreme Court rulings. And so because the Supreme Court was concerned about this sort of broader declaratory relief that we were asking for. That's why we've targeted something a lot more specific. So in this case, you know, we're looking at one statute and these constitutional provisions, and we're hoping that that is narrow enough so that the courts can rule on whether or not it is unconstitutional to promote this Alaska LNG project. And you know, the courts still do need to be brave to some extent to, especially in Alaska, where you can imagine that fossil fuel extraction is a huge part of the culture, to go and, you know, think about a challenge to this type of action. But it is always within the jurisdiction of a court to declare a statute or even a government agency action unconstitutional. So that's all we're asking this court to do. And in order to do so, we're asking it to look beyond this motion to dismiss and let us present our evidence at trial, because we will bombard the court with lots of expert witness and expert you know, testimony that shows that this is just an incredible amount of greenhouse gases that are going to be emitted from this project. So long story short, this is a narrower case than our previous two cases. And so that's why we feel pretty confident that the court you know, has jurisdiction and shouldn't feel too intimidated by looking at it.
Okay, I have a question myself, and that is, I think with Montana, you sued the state. And it sounds like in Hawaii, you sued maybe the State Department of Transportation. So how does that, how do you decide who and to sue? How does that all work?
Yeah, so it sort of depends on the activity that's happening in the state. So in Alaska, it's actually the Alaska Gasline Development Corporation and the state. And then in Montana, there were other government agencies along with the state of Montana that were being sued. For example, in Hawaii, the reason why we targeted transportation was because there's actually quite a bit of movement in the energy sector to transition to renewable energy, but the transportation sector was just lagging. And so that was the sort of nut that we needed to crack in the state of Hawaii in order for it to start reducing emissions in the transportation sector. And in Hawaii, we had a lot of really good law on our side as well. There was a mandate to decarbonize by 2045. And so the Department of Transportation was really just not complying with that mandate. So so that's why we targeted transportation. So it sort of depends on the circumstances of the state. This LNG project is so extreme. It's like a easy target almost, because it's just an incredible, huge project and a huge amount of emissions that would result if it were to be built. And it's being mandated by the state through a law. The state is saying you must build this. So that was another government action that we thought would be a good target. So long story short, again, it just sort of depends on what's happening in that state, what laws are in place, and also what constitutional provisions are involved in that particular state's constitution.
Okay, and another question, possibly you've answered it, but provisions of the Alaska Constitution, have provisions of the Alaska Constitution been applied before in ways that help that case move forward?
For the Alaska case, the constitutional provisions that we're using, in particular under Article 8, there is quite a bit of case law that is out there for Article 8. I would say, you know, not all of it has been applied the way that we are applying it, but there's some really good opinions by the Supreme Court that you can translate pretty easy to our situation. You know, in particular, the sustainable yield provision, the government has a duty to, you know, allow for a sustainable yield of natural resources into the future. And when you hear the stories of our plaintiffs, that's just not happening with the impacts of climate change, and if they were to get more extreme. And so, you know, maybe not the exact case hasn't been decided, but there is good language that certainly helps us in this case.
Yeah, I have actually seen in the Montana Constitution that very thing, that they should be using their resources in a way that's sustainable. Another question, have the winds in Hawaii and Montana led to any other state level suits? Is there talk of any new suits? I guess my question is, are states starting to get nervous? Are they seeing what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly the state of Hawaii saw what happened in Montana. Of course, I can't say whether or not that influenced their decision to settle, but I think that we had a good case going forward, at least in my opinion. I may be biased, but I think that courts do pay attention to that sort of thing, and you know, it takes one brave judge to sort of hopefully have the snowball effect to sort of to give other judges permission to rule similarly. So I think judges do pay attention, especially with our cases, what's happening around. Of course, our other cases are always cited by the opposition, the ones that have been dismissed, but we've been getting nuggets here and there of really important language that supports us. And so I do think that, you know, moving forward, it's going to start, you know, it's certainly going to help us as we bring other cases, and we are always looking at other cases and analyzing other states that we can go to next, for sure.
Okay. All right, now I'm just trying to see if I'm missing any questions. So if you would just bear with me.
There are new questions in the Q&A box.
Okay, thank you. All right. Let's see, what do you think about climate necessity defense as a legal strategy for civil disobedience?
So I think what is asking is like, when this is more of like in a criminal context, if, you know, folks are being arrested or, you know, and I'm certainly not a criminal attorney, so I don't necessarily want to speak out of term. But you know, I think that's certainly being asserted, and there's probably good ways to use it. I'm just not as familiar with that.
Okay. Does writing to the DOJ, Department of Justice, help? Do they oppose the Alaska action?
The Department of Justice hasn't necessarily weighed in as far as like on the federal level on our state action. But I certainly think, for example, when we've reached out for support in our Juliana case and, you know, another federal action that we have going on, the Department of Justice does, you know, hear from the community. And I think, you know, they don't necessarily acknowledge it, but can't ignore it. So that's really important. I think that because this is a state action, it's really, we only will interact in this specific case with the state and with the Alaska Gasline Development Corporation, who are, of course, opposing the action at this point. But so yeah, so we haven't heard directly from the DOJ in Alaska.
Okay, and I think this, let's see, and one more question. Yeah, this tends to be more the federal government. It says what articles in the U.S. Constitution can be used to file a suit, but I don't know if that's relevant to you filing state level cases.
Yeah, so so we do have two federal cases. Juliana, who the Elders Climate Action has supported in various levels, and then we have a case against the EPA, and those are brought under the United States Constitution. For example, the case against the EPA right now has an equal protection element to it, and so that is all under the federal Constitution, and then that would be federal case law supporting those actions. So that's why in our Alaska case, it's a little bit different, because we are dealing with a different constitution. But actually, it's fortunate because the Alaska Constitution does have this really strong natural resources protection within their constitution. So it actually helps us to be within the state constitution in that way.
Okay. Okay, can you ask for any updates on Juliana versus US? So yeah, we were talking about federal stuff. So are there any updates on that?
Yeah, so Juliana has had a very complicated and tumultuous existence. Most recently, if you've been following, the Ninth Circuit dismissed the case. And so we are currently exploring options, and that's sort of where we're at right now. So it's not necessarily over, but there's limited avenues before us right now. One of them being talking to our representatives in Congress. But as far as court goes, we're sort of in the process of deciding what we're going to do next in Juliana.
And then what about the EPA case?
EPA is in a similar, well, it's in a different position where we are waiting to have a hearing on our amended complaint in that case. It was dismissed and then we amended, and now we're waiting for the next steps there. So that case is still ongoing, but it's in sort of a lull. And I would encourage folks too on our website. This is like really incredible, but our support team has taken this time. Is each of the cases actually has a really like kind of a helpful outline of like our timeline, excuse me, of where when it was filed, where it's at, and like what's happening in the future. And what's really nice about it, if you like to read legal documents or are interested in what we actually argue before the court, is all of our filings are linked in those timelines. So it's kind of a great way, if one case interests you, to go to that, to go to our website, and you can follow the links to whatever case you want to look at. And there's like a great timeline to look at it in that way.
Okay, and then are there ways we elders can help support speaking with members of Congress on these cases? And again, I think this even applies to Utah, because again, I think with Brett and his team's climate action now, that there's, I think they could be a big help. But yeah, are there ways we can help in terms of speaking with members of Congress?
Yeah, for Utah, right now, I think the biggest help is getting folks to show up at the oral argument and supporting the youth through that. Always reaching out to Congress or state representatives, I think, is helpful, and it shows that the community, cares about these issues and supports the youth in their cases. So I would never discourage that. And I know our government representative, Liz Lee, has reached out to Elders Climate Action quite a few times for Juliana, and we're so thankful for those helpful, supportive things that have happened by, supporting resolutions and that sort of thing. So we will definitely, reach out when those types of opportunities are available, but just on your own, reaching out as well is never a bad thing. And then, yeah, anytime you can attend one of the hearings or rallies, it's just incredible. And it's such a fun experience to see the community come out and cheering these youth on. Normally after a hearing, at least one or two of the youth will speak, and it's just kind of a neat experience to see the youth in action that way.
Okay, yeah, I'm probably not going to get all the questions, but let me get at least one more in. It says, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, have climate organizations filed amicus curiae, I don't know if that's right, beliefs in support of the Alaska youth? And then the same person said, thank you for your work and fine presentation.
Yeah, so we definitely, when we have big filings, ask different organizations or reach out to different organizations for amicus support, which, don't feel bad about pronouncing that word, because I don't even think attorneys can ever agree on how to pronounce it. But I say amicus, but some people say amicus. But yes, we almost always have amicus support. When we have filings, we just had a petition for appeal in Virginia, and there were I think 27 law professors that wrote a public trust doctrine brief in support of our youth having their appeal heard. And then there was some medical professionals that also submitted a brief. So there's almost always opportunities for that in Alaska, because it is still in this initial motion to dismiss phase. We didn't have the amicus support, but I will guarantee that if the motion to dismiss is granted, which fingers crossed it won't be, and we need to appeal, we'll certainly be seeking out support from individual organizations for that.
Okay. Yeah, I think this could probably be found on your website because I think you list all the attorneys, but somebody asked how many attorneys you have working for you at Our Children's Trust.
Yeah, so I think this is just a guess, but I think around 10 of us are working in some capacity on these various cases at any given time. Yeah.
And I think, and then one last question that I can see. Hold on, let me make sure that's really it. Yeah, and it was who stands to benefit from the export of liquid natural gas, and I think it's probably the state of Alaska and the businesses.
Yeah. So one of the claims by the Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation in promoting this LNG project is that well, first of all, it will supply some natural gas to the state of Alaska, which there are some natural gas supplies that are running low in certain areas. And so that they tout this as like, oh, we're going to save, Alaska with this natural gas. And then as it goes down and is exported out of the southeast part of Alaska, it is expected to go to places like China and other countries where AGDC is claiming that, well, this will actually be a good thing because it will displace coal and other things, but in reality, it's still just an incredible amount of emissions that are bound to occur from this project.
Okay, well, I want to be respectful of your time. So again, I just want to thank you so much for your time with us. These important legal actions that you're taking and sharing some of the updates with us. And please extend our support to all the youth plaintiffs who are fighting for their rights to a livable future. Thanks again for being our guest this evening and our longtime partner. And Liz and Matt, I think you pick it up from here. We thank you all for being a part of this. We hope you'll stay on for the 15-minute action party that begins in just a few minutes. But again, Joanna, thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you to all of you for having me and for your support. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Joanna. It was great listening in on all the wonderful work you're doing. And hello, everyone. Looking forward to this action party with you tonight for the last 15 minutes of this call. I'm joined today by Celia as well. The two of us have been tag teaming as the newest members of Climate Action Now, given that Matthew has transitioned into grad school, which is an awesome new adventure for him. So we're excited to be here with you today. Jen has very kindly offered for us to trial a new type of style for these action parties with you tonight. So we've been getting feedback from you and we've heard it that web forms are something that would be very much welcomed for taking actions with Climate Action Now. So what we'd like to do tonight is walk through 7 different actions using web forms. And what we're really hoping here is that because everything has been so wonderful with these action parties in the past, we would just love to get your feedback and any advice that you can offer on how we can make improvements. So this is the first time that we will be doing an action party with these online web forms. So feel free to treat this as sort of an experiment, like any feedback or opinions that you would like to share in the chat or send to me afterwards are very much invited and welcomed. So thanks so much for being willing to take a spin with this new type of style with us. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen. So, and is everyone seeing this QR code right now? So I do, even though we would love for folks to try this new web form, the one caveat that I will share is, unfortunately, we haven't synced up this ability to take actions online with the app. So if you're a dedicated app user and you really like to earn those points and get those trees from earning points, unfortunately, the actions that we take right now are not going to sync up with the app. So this is a QR code for the actions that we'll be taking as a group. If you feel really strongly about using the app, then I'll leave this up for a moment. So go ahead and scan that, and you can just go through the actions at your own pace and in the style that is typical for these calls. But since we'll be doing web forms as a group, I'm going to move us onto our first action. So I'm going to share the screen here, and what I need to do is, it's going to be a little clunky. I'm going to be stopping screen share multiple times to give you the link. So I'm going to stop share for just a moment. And I will send you this first web form that's going to be on my screen. So go ahead and open up that link in the chat. All right. So what we've got here, if you prefer to read the message before you hit send, you can see the message in this portion of the web form. It's the exact same type of message that is in the Climate Action Now app. It would take too long to have everyone read everything, so I'll just share what the action is intended to do. But if you prefer to read something fully before sending, of course, feel free to go at your own pace. So in addition, another element of this web form to flag is whereas the app automates your personalized message. In this format, we have to type it out ourselves. So what I've done here is I've just written out my own little statement that I'm going to copy paste in. And you might find it helpful for going through multiple of these as well to make yourself a little note somewhere where you can copy paste your personalized message that you can add here. So mine is, I'm a 26-year-old who wants a livable future for me and my generation. But feel free to say anything along those lines. Just a short, concise one sentence to personalize this message and let the recipient know that there are different individuals sending these messages. So, okay, this first action, let's get into the actual action taking. So in this first case, reflecting on the case that we heard about from Joanna tonight. So this is telling major newspapers to report on Sagoonick v. State of Alaska 2. So we all know about this from our wonderful talk tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit send. In my case, I have used this web form before, so it has included my name, email, and address. But if you haven't used this voter voice interface before, you'll have to fill it out once, and then there will be an option for you to save your settings, so you won't have to do it again. The exception to that is if you're on Safari. Our understanding is that it won't save in Safari due to privacy reasons with Apple. So just be aware of that if you're not seeing a save option.
Wait,
Hey, Liz,
sorry, Liz, to cut you off. It seems
Mhm.
like the people in the chat, as a panelist, I'm only able to send the link to other hosts and panelists, and can't send links in the chat to everyone. So it seems like everyone is not getting our links.
Ah, I see. Thank you for flagging that. That would
Jen,
make it really hard for
help me
people to
out
do.
with sharing this link with the team, please?
Yes, let me make you co-host, Celia, and that should
Perfect.
solve that issue.
All right, thank you everyone in the chat who flagged that, and
Apologies.
no worries, no worries. Liz, I can share links from now on.
Okay, awesome. That would be great. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks everyone for bearing with us as we get through some of these little technical hiccups. We really appreciate your time tonight with trying out this new style.
All right.
Liz, one other thing to call people's attention to.
Mhm.
Here on the confirmation screen, you'll see that that message to the newspapers, it lists the newspapers that are going to get the message. On the prior screen, where you can see you can attach the message, it also shows you who the message is going to go to. And this is a difference between the web form and the CAN app. In the CAN app, you'll just send a message to one newspaper after another, after another, after another. With the web form, we can send all the message to all of the newspapers with a single action. That would be true also for your legislators, state and federal.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Brett.
Thanks, Brett. All right, have folks been able to take this action?
Yep.
Getting thumbs up. All right, I sent the
Awesome.
second one into the chat.
Great, thank you, Celia. All right, so this is a very similar action, but in this case, we are sending it to an Alaska newspaper to get some more local coverage on this specific case. So again, as is the way with Climate Action Now actions, our hope is that this is pretty easy to do somewhat quickly. So I'm going to copy my personal statement again, add it into the message body, and simply hit send, and that should send our next action. All right, going on to our third action. What we've got now, much in the way that Joanna was talking about the importance of talking to Congress, even though it's about these court cases. This is an action where we are telling the Biden administration and the Department of Justice to let Juliana 21 be heard at trial. As we heard during the talk today, we know that there's lots of fluctuations and up and down with this trial. But here is an action to just sort of bring it front of mind again to the Biden administration and the Department of Justice, and to let them know that people have not forgotten about this very important case and that we want it to go to trial.
Liz,
So
would you press the must plus more button in the upper right? So see this, you can see this message is going to the President, Vice President, Attorney General, Climate Advisor, and Solicitor General. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
once you all have put in your address and told the website to remember your address, then as you can see, going from web form to web form, it's super easy, just like the app. You just press the send button, go to the next web form. It remembers everything, press the send form, and go, with the exception is your personal message. If you want to put a personalized message, as Liz is doing at the top there.
awesome. So that's 3 down, and with 1 button, we've got 5 people getting that email, as we can see here in the confirmation message. Thanks, Celia, for that 4th action. So we're over halfway done. Okay, so now we've got one telling Congress to co-sponsor the concurrent Children's Fundamental Rights and Climate Recovery Resolution. So what this action is doing is asking members of Congress to co-sponsor a resolution that is a congressional way to support the fundamental rights that are pursued in the Juliana case. So this is, you know, approaching the same issue, but from a different angle and a different target audience, but very much related to the Juliana case. Once again, I'll add my personal message, hit send. And in my case, as someone in Oregon, this has gone out to my Oregon senators and representatives. Alrighty, let me pull up the chat so I can get a sense where we are. So Celia, if you could share our 5th action. Thanks so much. All right, so in this case, the Utah case that Joanna brought up, this is an opportunity to tell Utah newspapers to report on this case, which will help with getting people in the seats to listen in on the trial, and also just spread general awareness throughout Utah of this important case, which will help with people being able to show up and support. Yes, and from what I'm seeing in the chat, I'll share to Michael's question. We do have the ability with this web form, what it's doing is it's sending the same message. So this boilerplate content is going to all of the people listed here. So with just a few clicks, we're sending the same message to multiple people. All right, let's do the 6th one. Thanks so much, Celia. So this action is telling major newspapers to report on the power of youth-led climate lawsuits. The Climate Action Now team wrote a little message out describing some of the recent landmark victories in youth-led climate lawsuits. So these victories in Hawaii, Montana, and then the fluctuating situation with Juliana, we bring that in as well. So this is just telling major newspapers a sort of big picture view of the movement of youth climate lawsuits and letting them know how impactful these are and asking for them to report on them more frequently. And then Celia, if you could send in our last action, thanks so much. Okay, and then this one, we heard from Joanna all about how liquefied natural gas is a no-go. And so this is asking Morgan Stanley to stop investing in liquefied natural gas. They are the largest active funder of liquid natural gas. And so this is an especially important company contact for us to reach out to and advocate for no more liquid natural gas investment. All right, and with that, oops, let's see, I think, Mark, I see your hand
Yeah,
raised.
Liz, I have a question.
Yeah.
If I couldn't keep up, if we can go onto the website later and do this, would Joanna get any sort of feedback about how many actions were taken, and is there any sort of feedback loop for our Children's Trust?
I see. So we don't have the traditional like infrastructure setup that we have in the app to be able to like really easily send these like impact metrics for how many times an action has been taken. There is a way for the climate action team now to go in manually and look at the user data in voter voice, but not in a way where we can associate it with a specific set of users, like a cohort of ECA users or anything like that. So we're sort of at a beta stage with these online forms and just trialing them out. Our hope here is really to get a sense of if this format feels useful to folks at ECA, the specific like user interface type of experience, but unfortunately it's not as linked in with all the like capabilities and benefits of the app sort of ecosystem that we've got set up with the traditional action parties. Did that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, but if at some point, for instance, Joanna called you, let's say next week, and said, "Hey, how many actions were taken on these things?" You would probably be able to provide her that information. I know it's old-fashioned, but
Yes, yeah, we could definitely look at how many times the specific action had been taken, just not in relation to this specific action party.
excellent. Thanks.
Awesome. And I don't want to take up too much time since I know Jen said she needs some time at the end to share messages. So I will pass it back over to Jen. And thank you so much, everyone, for trying out this new method today. I'm going to drop a couple of links in the chat, and please feel free to send me any feedback. Your opinions are very much welcomed on your experience tonight with the action party. So thank you.
Excellent. And Liz, can we share these links tomorrow in our follow-up email that goes out? And will they still be active and usable? Okay, great.
Yes,
We'll make
definitely.
sure
And I
go
can
in.
send those to you. Yep.
And if there was any other actions that we didn't get to that you want to send to me, I'll make sure that all of those links go in. If you could maybe just send me a list of all of them, that would be great. And then I just wanted to flag 3 events coming up, and I will make sure that they also go in the follow-up email tomorrow. The first one is Electrify Your Life, the heat pump session that was originally scheduled for August. It got rescheduled for September, so September 6th at 1 p.m. Eastern. the ECA 10th anniversary gala event. This is going to be a really important event for us as a community. Brett is part of that event too. And we're getting ready for it. So September 17th, mark your calendars and plan to join us for that event, 7 p.m. And then also our next upcoming national call. We have a great speaker that will be talking to us about misinformation, disinformation, and greenwashing. So all topics that I know you don't want to miss. So make sure you're there, and we'll see you next time. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you to the Climate Action team for this new format that helps our audience engage through their computers and not just their phones. So hopefully we'll be able to provide more opportunities for our audience to use their phones and their computers to take more action. And overall, y'all will just get to take more actions. And that's what we want. So have a great night, everybody. And thanks for joining us.